Today's story is wild and complicated. A dark secret stayed hidden for 20 years. But in the end, justice was served. Let me tell you about the murder of Sister Catherine. It happened in the US in the 1970s. At first, no one really paid attention. It wasn't until over 2 decades later that a woman spoke up, revealing a shocking truth. That's when people started to listen. This case sparked a huge conversation about faith and pushed the Catholic Church to make some major changes. So what really happened that made this story so powerful? If you want ordinary, look elsewhere. Welcome to TC Channel, where other channels fall short, unique mysteries solved step by step. Baltimore is the biggest city in Maryland and one of the most Catholic cities in the US. It's home to the oldest Catholic church in America and was also the Vatican's first headquarters in North America. In the 1960s, nearly everyone in Baltimore went to church and prayed the rosary. Catholicism was everywhere, in schools, hospitals, police stations, even the courts. Catherine grew up surrounded by this Catholic culture. She was born into a devout Catholic family in 2008. Pennsylvania, after finishing high school at a Catholic school, she knew she wanted to dedicate her life to God. She took the vow and became a nun in 1969. The church sent her to teach at Archbishop Keough High School in Baltimore. Keough was an all-girls school run by the Sisters of Mercy. The school was strict with its rules. Every word and action was monitored. Even small mistakes could lead to punishment. But Catherine was different. She was kind, gentle, and treated the girls like friends. It didn't take long for her to become popular with the students. Since she was close in age to them, they quickly bonded. The girls started confiding in her about their problems. In just 1 semester, Catherine became very close with them. Then as the next semester was about to start, she was suddenly told she'd be transferred to another school. She was sad to leave, but accepted the change. What she didn't know, though, was that what awaited her next was the end of her life. On November 7th, 1969, Catherine wrapped up her teaching day and headed home. She seemed extra cheerful. After a quick rest, she told her roommate, Sister Helen, that it was payday and she was going out to buy a gift for her newly engaged sister. She grabbed her keys and left around 7 p.m. Catherine stopped by First National Bank to cash her $255 paycheck. Then she went to Mully's Bakery to pick up some French bread for the next day. After that, she went to Edmondson Mall to find the perfect gift for her sister. About an hour and a half later, around 8:30 p.m., a neighbor saw Catherine pulling back into the parking lot. But strangely, she stayed in her car like she was waiting for someone. That neighbor was the last person to see her. At 1 a.m., Sister Helen, still waiting, called the police. An officer came to check it out, since it hadn't been long. And Baltimore was known for being safe. He figured Catherine would probably show up in the morning, so he made a quick note and left. Unfortunately, the officer was wrong. Catherine never came back. On January 3, 1970, 2 hunters in southwest Baltimore came across a lifeless female body on a small hill. After a quick investigation and family ID, they confirmed it was Sister Catherine, who had been missing for almost 2 months. Her skirt was lifted and her upper body was fully exposed. There was a deep dent in her skull with no blood at the scene. Police thought she'd been attacked and then left there. When news broke of Sister Catherine's death, everyone was stunned. Baltimore was known for its deep respect for Catholicism, so no one could understand why someone would harm a nun. Case. At first, the police in Maryland thought it was the work of a serial killer. A girl, around the same age as Catherine, had gone missing after a shopping trip. 2 days later, her body was found in the woods. But here's the big difference. She had no signs of being attacked, so Sheriff Harry didn't think the 2 cases were connected. Instead, he started looking more closely at people around him. He felt something wasn't right about Catherine's disappearance. He kept going over the details and noticed some red flags. The record showed that before Sister Helen called the cops, Catherine had actually contacted Father Jerry. Sister Helen said she got worried when Catherine didn't come back, so she called Father Jerry, but Father Jerry said Catherine never showed up. Later, he and Brother Peter went to the apartment to meet Sister Helen around 1 a.m. They decided to call the police. The officers came quickly, but left within the hour. Father Jerry and Brother Peter stayed behind holding a prayer service for Catherine around 4 a.m. Father Jerry and Brother Peter decided to go for a walk, just a short distance away. They spotted Catherine's car parked with the door ajar. They rushed over, found the keys still in the ignition, the engine warm, but no one inside. There was a bag of French bread on the passenger seat, and Catherine's coat tossed on the back seat. They went back to the apartment and called the police again. When the police investigated, they found no fingerprints in the car. It seemed like someone had wiped them off, but they did find twigs and broken leaves on the roof antenna and steering wheel. That's when Sheriff Harry started to feel something was off Sister Helen, and Father Jerry said they were worried about Catherine. But why didn't they look for her themselves? Sister Helen knew Catherine had gone shopping, so why didn't she check the usual route? Instead, she called Father Jerry right away. Then Father Jerry and Brother Peter's actions seemed strange. On a cold night, they randomly decided to take a walk and just happened to find Catherine's car, Sheriff. Harry thought this was too weird and pressed them for more answers. When asked what Catherine had been doing that night, Sister Helen said she'd been home, but there was no one to back her up. Father Jerry said he and Brother Peter were together all night, watching a movie, drinking and talking, until they got the call from Sister Helen and went to the apartment. But Brother Peter's story didn't match. He said they did see the movie, kept the tickets as proof. But after that, he went back to the monastery and didn't head to the apartment until later. Sheriff Harry caught the inconsistency and pressed harder. Father Jerry changed his story, saying he just got confused. Sheriff Harry wasn't buying it, so he got a search warrant to look through Father Jerry's house. When they searched, they found some letters that revealed more than just a friendship. Father Jerry and Sister Catherine had been close, but the letters showed a deeper connection. One even mentioned Father Jerry had proposed, hoping to build a life together. But Catherine's reply showed she hadn't made up her mind, leaning more toward dedicating herself to God. She politely turned him down. The police began wondering, could love have turned into something darker? Was that why Father Jerry might have snapped? But some officers felt it was too far-fetched to think a rejected proposal would lead to murder. They started to believe there was more going on behind the scenes. Then out of nowhere, a letter turned up, and it left everyone in shock. Dear Jerry, I'm over 10 days late, but sadly it finally came. I know it might sound selfish, but my heart is breaking. I just have to wait for you, for your needs, your promises. I've come to accept your complicated situation, but it's still hard. All I can do is love you in silence. Yearning for you, I want to carry your child. I love you, Helen. After reading it, the whole room went quiet. No one could believe it. These priests and nuns, who were supposed to live by their vows, had secretly gotten tangled up in something so messy. After hearing all this, Sheriff Harry was sure of one thing. Sister Catherine was definitely the victim here. Just as he was getting ready to dig deeper, everything changed. The higher-ups in Maryland suddenly told him to stop the investigation. The Archbishop of Baltimore had hired a top-tier legal team and was threatening to sue the police. They said if the police had any solid evidence, they should make arrests right away, but if not, the case had to be dropped, or they'd sue for defamation. With all that pressure, Sheriff Harry knew he couldn't go up against the church, so he made one last request. Let Father Jerry and the others take lie detector tests. If they passed, they'd be free to go. To his surprise, Father Jerry and Brother Peter agreed right away. They passed the test and proved they had nothing to do with Catherine's death. But Sister Helen refused the test and never spoke of it again, not even until she passed away in 2001. Once the investigation into Father Jerry and the others was shut down, the case went cold for the next 20 years. Nothing new came up. Just when people thought the case was forgotten, an anonymous tip brought it back into the spotlight. In the spring of 1994, a woman named Jenny came forward revealing a secret she'd kept hidden for years. She said she knew who killed Sister Catherine. Jenny had been a student at Keogh High School 25 years before, where Sister Catherine had been her teacher. She remembered walking into that prestigious school feeling proud, only to end up trapped in a nightmare. Here's how it went down. One day, Jenny went to the school chapel and confessed to Father Maskell, asking for forgiveness. Father Maskell asked her what happened, and she explained that her uncle had abused her. She felt dirty and feared she wouldn't make it to heaven. After listening, Father Maskell asked if he could see her face. Jenny agreed, and he quickly glanced at her. Then he said, "You're guilty. "Your face shows it, you'll go to hell." Jenny broke down crying. Father Maskell comforted her, telling her he'd help her atone, and took her to his office to pray. The office was tucked away in a hidden part of the school. Once inside, Father Maskell had her undress, and what started as a prayer turned into something else. Afterward, he told her it was a special ritual to cleanse her soul, and insisted she keep it a secret. Though disgusted, Jenny didn't question him, telling herself this was the only way to be forgiven, but that was just the beginning. Father Maskell kept asking Jenny to come to his office for prayers, and though she hated it, she convinced herself it was the only way out. He grew bolder. The prayer sessions became more frequent, and the places expanded. From his office to his home, his car, and even outside, Jenny began to wither, nervous and exhausted. Sister Catherine noticed. She started talking to Jenny, trying to figure out what was going on, but Jenny always lied or found ways to avoid her. Finally, on the last day of the term, Jenny couldn't take it anymore. After school, while everyone else left, Jenny stayed behind, sitting at her desk. Sister Catherine stayed too, and when the room cleared out, she sat next to Jenny. Jenny broke down, wiped her tears, and told Sister Catherine everything. Sister Catherine was shocked, but quickly regained her calm. She patted Jenny's shoulder and said, "It's okay. Next term, things will get better. You just have to trust me." Jenny wasn't sure, but packed up and went home when school started again. Father Maskell never came near her. Even when they passed each other in the hall, he acted like a stranger. Jenny felt relief, but then she noticed something strange. Sister Catherine was gone. She later found out she'd been transferred to another school. Jenny was grateful, knowing Sister Catherine had helped her escape. She planned to thank her someday, but soon after, Jenny saw on the news that Sister Catherine had disappeared. She suspected Father Maskell had something to do with it, and confronted him again. She demanded to know what he'd done to her. Without saying much, Father Maskell drove Jenny to a remote area, her to a small hill, and pointed to the ground. "There she is," he said. Jenny froze, seeing Sister Catherine's body decomposed and covered in maggots. Father Maskell slowly walked up, patted Jenny's shoulder, and threatened her, "Don't ever bring this up again, or God will punish you like this." Jenny was terrified and never spoke about it again. It wasn't until 25 years later that she found the courage to come forward. When Jenny came forward, it shook the whole country. Catholics make up nearly a quarter of the US, so people had a hard time believing church leaders could do something like this. The Archbishop of Baltimore quickly denied it, but to avoid more media frenzy, they moved Father Maskell out of the country. In 1995, Annie filed a lawsuit against Father Maskell for abuse and murder. The defense argued it was too late to charge him and tried to trash Annie's story, claiming she made it all up. The court ended up tossing the case. Over the years, the story faded from the headlines, but Annie didn't stop fighting. She sent letters to every alum from her school, asking if anyone else had been hurt by Father Maskell. At first, no one responded, but by the 2000s, some victims reached out to her. A lot of them were older and no longer afraid to speak up. In 2017, 16 victims filed a lawsuit. Father Maskell had passed away, but after a long legal battle, the Archbishop of Baltimore finally settled. They paid the victims $472,000, and the scandal was finally put to rest. Before Sister Catherine went missing that summer, she reported Father Maskell's misconduct. The church started an investigation and moved her to another school to keep them apart. Strangely, the day after Catherine disappeared was the day she was supposed to testify. The FBI thought Maskell might have killed her to keep her quiet. They made him the main suspect. On February 28, 2017, they got permission to dig up Maskell's grave and take a DNA sample. They compared it to cigarette butts found near Catherine's body, but the DNA didn't match. Annie still believes Maskell is the killer. She thinks the cigarette butts might not even be from the killer, or that the killer wasn't Maskell himself. That's the story of Sister Catherine's case. What do you think? In 2010, 2 retired women, former students of St. Caius, decided to keep searching for answers. They were thankful for the joy Sister Catherine brought them. She didn't deserve to die like that, so they dedicated their lives to finding the truth. Sadly, years have passed and many leads are now lost. Even the evidence the police had has vanished or been destroyed, though many still want justice for Sister Catherine. This might be a mystery that'll never be solved.